Dr. Sai, I was wondering if you could give us an update on the three-judge fact-finding panel.
Thank you. Good question. So the Permanent Court of Arbitration, the case that Jennifer was referring to, Larson versus the Hawaiian Kingdom. Lance Larson, who's also in Jennifer's district, Mountain View, right, was alleging that the Hawaiian government, which is a restored government similar to governments in exile during occupations, was liable for allowing American laws to be imposed in Hawaii, which led to his unfair trial and incarceration. Right? So actually the whole case was about the unlawful imposition of American law. Now, before the court could accept the case, as Jennifer noted, was they first had to verify that the Hawaiian Kingdom still exists as a country. And once they did confirm that, because only its government was overthrown, not the country, then it had to verify whether or not the acting government can actually represent the country. So they had to look at how it was established. And it followed the same logic as other governments during exile, governments in exile during occupation. In fact, it followed almost to the letter of how the Belgian government in exile was formed in London after Belgium was invaded and King Leopold was captured by the Germans. There was actually a provision in the Belgian constitution for a council of regency. It's amazing that that provision in the Belgian Constitution of 1821, I believe the year was 1821, the Hawaiian Kingdom had that same provision in the Constitution of 1864 because it was a constitutional monarchy. So what came out of that case was that the judges determined that without the United States participating, they cannot rule on whether or not the United States violated Lance Larson's rights, and then, secondary, hold the Hawaiian government accountable for the violation of those rights. The first issue is whether or not the United States, if the court can determine that the United States violated their rights. Now, under the rules of international law dealing with courts, because you don't have subpoena powers, you can't force a country to come into a court, right? But the United States was invited, and they chose not to come in, but they entered into an agreement with the acting government to have access to all records and pleadings. So actually, there was an exchange of agreement brokered by the Permanent Court of Arbitration. So Lance Larson basically lost his case against the acting government because without the United States, he can't proceed to come after the acting government. It's called an indispensable third-party rule. But what the court did in its decision, it said that the parties could resort to another procedure where you don't need the United States there. And that's called International Fact-Finding Commission of Inquiry, called fact-finding. And at the Permanent Court of Arbitration, there have only been 5 fact-finding commissions of inquiry. Now, what the fact-finding commission of inquiry do, what their function is, they serve similar to a grand jury. So the question then is, they're not going to rule that the United States, they're not going to make a decision the United States violated its rights. But as a grand jury type of entity, they will look at the facts and determine probable cause that, yes, these certain individuals violated Lance Larson's rights. But it's up to another court to prosecute the war crimes, not the Commission of Inquiry. So that was actually put in the arbitration award in 2001. It's in the international law reports. Now, we didn't take them up on that recommendation until 2 years ago. And as my deputy agent, Federico Lanzarini, a professor of University of Siena in Italy, he's my deputy agent. Lance Larson was represented by an attorney, Dexter Kayama. We entered into an agreement to go to fact-finding. And that fact-finding established the commissioners with 3 of them. They agreed to be a part of it. One of them is Professor Shabas. His background is war crimes and human rights. He actually wrote an article on criminal intent, whether that applies to war crimes. Well, these people came in and agreed to be a part of the commission. So we were actually getting ready last year to have the hearing, the first hearing of the Fact-Finding Commission of Inquiry on the grounds of Iolani Palace at the Kanaina building. Well, there was big moves. I mean, security was even involved. former police officers running a security firm. Everybody's getting involved. And then we find out that the Permanent Court of Arbitration Secretary General told the commissioners that the Permanent Court is not recognizing these fact-finding Commission of Inquiry proceedings because the Hawaiian Kingdom is not a member of the United Nations. So when you think about that, wait, not a member of the United Nations. First of all, in order to go to the court, do you need to be a member of the United Nations? Actually, no. Switzerland was not a member of the United Nations until 2002. But they held hearings at the Permanent Court of Arbitration because they were a contracting power, because the Permanent Court of Arbitration was formed in 1899, the Hague Convention number 1. So that prompted me to contact my deputy agent, Federico Lenzarini, to inquire, where's he coming from? Well, we get a letter stating it from the Secretary General. Now, this is when I'm going, wait a minute. This is not right, because we were already at The Hague. The hearings were held, and the tribunal recommended we go to fact-finding. It's not like we came up with this on our own. It's all procedural. We found out that there is probable cause and evidence that the Secretary General of the Permanent Court of Arbitration was acting as an agent for the United States to obstruct the proceedings.
Are we surprised?
No. So a complaint was filed with what is called the Administrative Council of the Permanent Court of Arbitration to bring that out. Now, what's amazing is the position of the Secretary General saying that Hawaii is not a member of the United Nations, so they can't have the hearing, which doesn't make sense, was actually what the United States was actually saying when Palestine tried to become a member of the Permanent Court of Arbitration 2 years ago. And the United States was blocking it. So they had a meeting of the Administrative Council, which is made up of all the countries that ratified the treaty that formed the court. And the United States was making the claim that Palestine cannot be a member of the Permanent Court of Arbitration, a treaty partner, because they're not a member of the United Nations. Now, for them to use that argument with us, it's like apples and oranges. But to me, what it shows, there's a direct nexus to that statement by the Secretary General to the United States. Now, if anything, that only adds to our situation that it's proving our point. Now, the commission, all that needs to take place is for the Permanent Court of Arbitration to begin the administrative aspect of the proceedings, because they're the ones who provide the interpreters. They're the ones who provide the facilities, the management of the situation. They're like a clerk of a court. All that needs to be done is change that, and it begins. Now, once that begins, with regard to Lance Larson's case, state of Hawaii officials, where he was put on trial in the old courthouse right over here, that's where it happened. The question then is, the judge, the sheriffs, the police, are they liable for prosecution of war crimes? That's what these proceedings were going to be addressing. Can you understand why they needed to obstruct it? But by obstructing it, they didn't negate it. They showed their hand again. So again, it's awareness, and people in Europe are beginning to understand this. But for what Jennifer has done, it has taken it to another level, because this is an official of the United States who is making the same points that we are making in these proceedings. Yeah. So the case, as far as the where are you? Who asked the question? It's ongoing. It can actually happen. The first hearing can take place anytime. The agreement is still binding. So we're still bound by the agreement to go to fact finding. Right now, we're just dealing with obstruction by the Secretary General, who we say has a direct nexus to the United States, because he's definitely saying the same thing that he was saying for Palestine. Now, why would the Secretary General be saying that thing? Secretary General is actually Dutch. He's not supposed to be saying those things. Well, so I hope I answered that question. But when it happens, you folks will hear about it. What? As soon as, so you have a river, right? And a lot of, remember the water, because I lived up Mauka, I lived Glenwood, 52 inches we got. Okay, you saw that river's going down, right? A lot of crap is being brought in, and it's being clogged. Then it starts to go out. Okay, what we have here is it's clogged. The water's still there. All we got to do is remove the debris and it goes. That's really how simple it is. We don't have to redo anything. We just got to remove the debris that is obstructing the flow. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this, Jen. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Aloha kako. O mahi ai ko uinoa. O mahi ai ko uinoa. Hamana au o lelo Hawaii. O lelo au li'i li'i. I'm going to turn around so you can see one of the things I do. One of the activist things I do. And shortly after Jen took office, I went to Jen and said, we have this issue. Jen knew it because I live in Mountain View. Jen lives in Mountain View. Anybody that lives anywhere on Hawaii Island knows the issue because it happens to you every day. And Jen was one of the first council members I went to. And Jen was so eager, and she wanted to do it right. She asked me questions, what can I do? Because what we were asking Jen to do was write a letter to the congressional delegation advocating for the solution. And Jen did just that. And that was done in the summer of 2017. And you can read Jen's letter if you go on highcop.org, and you see Jen's beautiful picture sitting on that website, and you click on Jen, you can read the wonderful letter she wrote. Now, the good doctor met with Mike McCartney, I figured, for 4.5 hours, 3 1.5-hour sessions. I've met with Mike McCartney also on this issue. Obviously, Mike McCartney didn't hear what the good doctor said because you haven't seen anything happen, have you? And Mike McCartney didn't hear what I said either. So I went to the governor. I don't know whether you went to the governor or not, but I've met with the governor numerous times. And I said, Governor, you need to take care of your constituents. We elected you to take care of the constituents. And I say the same thing to Mayor Harry Kim, and I say the same thing to Brian Schatz. And I met with all of them. I say the same thing to Hirano. I say the same thing to Garbutt.
Ask the question. Yeah, ask the question.
Good.
What's your question?
What's the substance?
I'm here supporting Jen, and the question would be, there is a way to have the government recognize what you're asking to do. But it takes the right person to do it. And I'm going to hand you these slips when you leave this room, and I hope you come to these meetings and you meet who I believe is the person that will be running this government come January, that will listen to what the good doctor has to say and will look for a solution which I haven't been able to find. So my question is there someone here in this government that you think will stand up to the issue and provide the answer and the solution? I'm going to hand you this on the way out. I think this is the answer. Mahalo nui loa. Jen, thank you.
Thank you. My answer to that is no, I don't know. Uncle Abel.
Aloha ae, aloha kako, ano ae, kia. You know, we've been waiting for a long time. Our queen said something. We're the honest American. You're looking at them. After all these years, someone will come up and stand for truth and for righteousness, for their country, and for the things that they believe in the government. Because she took on something that is so heavy. And God is watching everybody. She can open up a lot of doors. In fact, she will open up a lot of doors. Don't, you know what I mean? Now everybody is a kind on that kind. Because Hawaii has been waiting for a long time, and the people of the suffering. She's the one that opened up the door, oh, honest American, and there's a whole bunch of them right here in front of my big fat nose that's standing up for truth. And that's what we need. Our government, or whatever it is, they all get anyway. So we need to clean house. And we need to bring back truth. Because you see him in the spots, you see him all of that, the president making comments about the guys not saluting the flag and they no more rights. Oh yeah, you see the Mexicans, they're all standing up and the president saying all kind of stuff, sending them guys back and doing all of this kind of stuff. All to do with immigration. She's the one that will open up all the doors now. Everybody is looking at all of this because we are all people that they will all suffer through all of this, not just us guys here. Every place around the world. So, all I can say, everybody, say prayers. And God bless and keep everybody strong. Because Hawaiian Kingdom is alive and is here to stay. Thank you. Aloha mai.
Thank you. So we're way past time. It's 8 o'clock now, but I will entertain questions as long as you have them. But we're just going to do a little bit of cleaning up. Thank you, Debbie Ward, for bringing all this beautiful foliage to help us lighten the mood a little bit. And also, I want to say thank you to our legislative aide that stuck with me, Nelson Ho.
I just wanted to ask a question of Dr. Sai. As you were indicating that we don't want the situation to explode, and you were suggesting that the governor, our governor, declared martial law. And when I hear martial law, I think about Marcos of the Philippines. And if we are under martial law, how do we move from that to whatever we really want to resolve the situation? I don't want to get stuck in martial law.
I hear you.
Me too. So the word martial actually means military, right? So when you do martial law, when you hear that word martial law, that applies within a country, like a civil war, and you declare martial law because you're dealing with an insurrection, right? Now, or an invasion by a foreign country. What basically martial law is it puts a stop to any legislation, and it puts control in the military governor to address or respond to the crisis. That's what it does. Otherwise, there's so many checks and balances. By the time you come up with a decision, you already got run over. So that's what martial law means. Now, the exact term martial law, which means military government, is actually applied in international affairs. So if it's the same concept, but instead of establishing a government during occupation martial law, you would call it military government. So there's actually a court case on this. The U.S. Supreme Court says, when you hear martial law, think internal. When you hear military government, think external. So for the United States, when it invaded Iraq and they overthrew the Iraqi government in 2003, they actually formed a military government. That's a form of martial law, but internationally, military government, and that was a coalition for provisional authority. And that's where Ambassador Bremer was administering Iraqi law. And through that process of administering Iraqi law, they then began the process of de-occupation, which ultimately led to al-Maliki, right, the prime minister at that time, to become the prime minister. And then a transfer of sovereign authority came through a treaty of peace, and then the occupation comes to an end. So that's the process. What we need today, which is why I spoke to Mike McCartney on this very serious matter, is that the state of Hawaii, although it thought it was an American government, it's not, but it is an armed force of the United States in a foreign state. They need to become a government. And in order to become a government, they have to declare martial law under their constitution, which international law sees as a military government. Actually gave Mike McCartney a report of what we covered for those 3 meetings. And I laid out everything. And that report is actually part of Jennifer's first letter that was sent to Kamehameha. So I would recommend that you folks go download the letter that Jennifer sent through her attorney to Mr. Kamehameha, and you will read that report, and you can now see what it was, because these are moves to fix the problem. These are not moves to exacerbate the problem. What exacerbates the problem is when you have defiance to the rules. See, then it gets worse. And that's why the key here is education and awareness and knowledge. Don't pick a side yet, because you may regret picking one side. Remember, you hear that thing, that common anecdote, whatever you say can and will be used against you in a court of law? Take that to heart. Don't say too much, because that could be used against you later, even though you didn't think so. The first question that I would pose if I'm faced with this is, where do I learn more about this? Yeah. We need to begin to ask the right questions and not take positions, because you might regret taking a position. And Jennifer, she took those actions by asking the right questions. And that was what I can see informed her presentation, because I can tell you, this was all her. It was all her. And it was impressive, but it does show the cognitive aspect of comprehension. She actually understood what she was explaining, even though she may have had trouble with certain terms. But you notice she said, oh, I had to look it up. Perfect. Get a dictionary. Look it up. Don't ask people what they think. Look it up. Webster's Dictionary. She now loves Black's Law Dictionary, you know. So that's how we can fix the problem. These things are all in motion. Right now is the awareness that is happening. And this is really good. I mean, to me, I think this is phenomenal, because this is not an issue of Americans, Hawaiians. It's not a racial issue. It's not a cultural. This is, everybody is affected by this. And that's what's important. And that's what's in the Geneva Convention. Yeah, mahalo. Did I answer that question? So I, too, want to get beyond the military government, and let's start living life for what it really is.
Thank you, Dr. Sai.
Aloha. My name is Danny Lee. I live in KL. First of all, yeah, I really got to congratulate Jen for being so courageous. I mean, it takes a lot of courage. It's always, it's like the first one to take that stand. I think it's hard. In fact, if you're in other districts, you should be pressuring your legislator to take the similar stand. I think that's important. In fact, this may be the beginning of a Me Too movement in terms of, getting back the whole, everybody, pushing them so that they take the right stand. So I congratulate, number one. Now, I myself is not Kanaka Maoli. I'm a settler. I've been here since 1971 when I came to University of Hawaii, Manoa. But I think education is important, because I didn't know any of these stuff. I wasn't brought up in the education system here, but even kids that were brought up here didn't know any of that stuff. So we're all learning. So that's really critical. Now, the only thing though is that I'm not a legal expert. I know you're saying that the legal aspect is to go back to the law of occupation and form a military, ask them to appoint a military government. But that's a slippery slope to me. That's my question. Because we know from history, the United States Army is an imperialist country. It has never followed any international law. So how can you trust them, and how can you enforce it? To me, you can only have that if you have a mass movement that really push them. And in fact, in the future, in the not too distant future, probably have to make international alliances, because other countries will have to help put a break on the United States taking, repressive action. So how do we do that? To me,
that's a good question. Thank you. No, that's an excellent question, because I always hear that. It's like when people hear military, panic button. Whoa, because what you see. Now, what's happening here is the military government hasn't even been formed. What you had is an armed force that has created this very problem that we're in. So this didn't happen through a military government. What we're looking at is a military government to fix the problem, because that's how the rules work. Now, in order for a military government to actually work with regard to civilians, when I say education, what I'm saying is you folks need to know what your rights are to hold the entity accountable that is called the military government. No, and see, that's part of the process that we're going through, okay, that what Jennifer's going through. But you folks are just getting a nibble of what your rights are, because once you know what your rights are, then you also have to know how to enforce your rights. The Geneva Convention is from 1949. You have to understand, which Jennifer is understanding, how the international community works for the protection of civilians during occupations. There are mechanisms there that are very different than what you would be used to within a country itself. Like, normally you can call the police, hey, I'm being assaulted. Okay, how do you do that if you're an occupied state? Who do you call? Right? That's why there are mechanisms called the International Committee of the Red Cross, Amnesty International, Human Rights Council. But you have to speak the language that they can understand. Because if you say Hawaii is a part of the United States, then it undermines what you're trying to seek to remedy. So the key here is the military government is going to be formed, because it has to, but it's going to be formed by people here in Hawaii. That's not the United States. That's called the state of Hawaii. That's my cousin who's a police officer. That's my son who's a cop in Honolulu. General Logan is a National Guardsman. He's not from, 25th Division. We're actually talking about our own people being a part of fixing the problem. This is not handing it off to Puakuloa and say, hey, you guys run with it. This is actually the state of Hawaii, and that's what I explained to Mike McCartney. So that military government is just the term that is used to apply to our situation. To put it bluntly, we've been playing football using baseball rules. We now are starting to understand football rules, and we're going, oh, that's what that is. That's what Jennifer is doing. She's applying football rules to explain a football game. So we have to stop using baseball rules, like the state of Hawaii, like the Constitution, like the federal government. That's baseball rules. But it's a slow process. Now, we at the University of Hawaii, we teach this stuff. We have writing intensive courses, both graduate and undergrad. So I can assure you that this is not happening in a vacuum. People are being educated, the younger generation who don't have baggage like all of us, growing up believing something that we now find out is not true. A lot of times what we're going through is just that paradigm shift, trying to say, no, this can't be, can't be. Did you know at the University of Hawaii, it's really an accepted fact that Hawaii's occupied? No, that's how they talk. Hawaii's occupied. Yeah, I knew that. That was not spoken that way at the university level before the Permanent Court of Arbitration in the Netherlands. Prior to that, they were talking colonization, indigenous rights, nativeness. Now, laws of occupation, Hague and Geneva Conventions. Now you get somebody from the UN Human Rights Office now sending a communication to the judges saying that you have to comply with the Hague and Geneva Conventions. Well, he forgot to tell you what happens when you don't comply, because when you don't comply, those are war crimes, and that's what Jennifer pointed out. So that's the reality that we're walking into. So the first thing here is the military government will fix the problem, but I am not proposing that you form the military government way before people wake up to know what their rights are. Because then how do you hold anybody accountable? You want to make sure who's up there. I know you know that you know what the law is. See, that's how it's supposed to work, and not, okay, whatever you say, yes, sir. So it's a process, yeah? But again, it's the process of knowing your rights first, as opposed to declaring we need a military government. Yeah. But we're going to need it to fix the problem. Otherwise, this whole place blows up.
Thank you, Dr. Sai. And we do have a handout on your rights as protected persons. But the main thing is understanding the Geneva Convention. And that is on my website as well. And we have a copy back there.
Aloha kako. My name's Kale Gumapak. We invited Jen to attend our conference over a year ago. as well as Mayor Harry Kim and all the other county council members. We invited them. And Jen was the only one that took us up on it. Oh, I didn't take that back. Harry showed up briefly, and Eileen O'Hara showed up briefly to the conference, but Jen was the only one that stayed at the entire conference. And I'd really like to thank her for taking the bull by the horn and sitting there and listening to all of the experts that we brought in. Dr. Sai, Donovan Preza, Dr. Willie Kawai, and all of the experts coming from the university. And so, Jen, I'd like to let people know that we have another conference scheduled. And for all of you here tonight, you all need to be there. And it's going to be during La Ku'oko'a. How many of you know what La Ku'oko'a is? Away. That is the Hawaiian Kingdom Independence Day, November 28th. But our conference is going to be held in Kalapana, down at Uncle's, on the 24th. And we will be bringing in Dr. Sai, Dr. Niklaus Schweitzer, who is a professor at the University of Hawaii and former consul to the Swiss embassy, Swiss consulate. And we'll be bringing in Dr. Kamana Beamer, as well as others. So you need to be there so that the questions that you're asking tonight will be answered. A lot of the questions, but the continuation of the education is necessary, because it's taken me several years to really get a grasp on this. And so, Jen, can you give us what you thought of our conference?
Oh yeah, that's what I talked about that a little bit. It was very loaded. It was heavy. I was confused. Obviously, this is very legally complex things, and it challenges the very foundation of everything that I believe to be true growing up in Hawaii. So yeah, please come. And like Dr. Sai said, the only way we're going to do this and bring justice and truth is through knowing our rights and through being educated. So the conference, those annual conferences are doing that. I mean, that's what got me started on reading these papers and doing this research, because it blew me away. And it's also fascinating. I mean, the Hawaiian Kingdom was very progressive for its time. Yeah, excuse me. It's a paradigm shift. I mean, this is all very new to me. I mean, I've only really come to terms with all of this and grown to really understand it enough to take action in the past few months.
Away from the speaker. Okay. So what I want to know is, are you going to challenge in some legal way, or just as an official make a stink about the fact that they did not provide this meeting with law enforcement protection and whatever security? Because you know why they did that, because they're delegitimizing you. They're rejecting you as an official, which is fill in the blank.
Retaliation. That's called retaliation. I don't know how to challenge it, honestly. Fortunately, we didn't really need them, fortunately. But when I had talked to them, I'd called our CPO, our community police officer for Puna. He said that he would ask his captain. The next day I called back. He said his captain said no. I said, why? And he said, I don't know. He just said no. I was like, well, what can we do if somebody starts getting crazy and disruptive? And he said, well, you can call us. And you know what happens when you call the police in Puna? Right. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, were you in line? I wasn't sure. Okay, I'm sorry. Then we'll get to you next, Ariel.
Linda Faye Kroll, president of Stop Bombing Hawaii, which I created out of frustration of the stonewalling. My question to you, Jen, is now your term's up in January, yes? December, okay. and then another council person will not be as good as you taking the place. But what is for you, I know you'll follow this through to wherever you have to, and it's going to go way beyond January, but what's for you after your council term? What are you going to do?
I'm going to be recovering for a minute. I don't really have anything to announce yet.
But you're not going to try to pursue anything in the state of Hawaii government, or are you?
Currently, no. I won't be running for office, if that's your question. Yeah, but I will be following this through. We have to keep the momentum up, and there's no going back. I need to follow through with what I've started.
My name is Ariel Murphy. I came from the Philippines. Oh, and I don't know if everybody knows the Philippines was once a U.S. colony. And I know how it is when foreigners occupy your country and prevent you from speaking your language, prevent you from doing certain things. They take over education. They take over everything. At this point, I understand, and I support sovereignty. I understand that we are still educating and making people aware of what this is all about and what could happen, and that it need not necessarily be explosive. But what I want to know is, at this point, what can we do, or what is being done? There's education. Our keikis are in the schools. What are they being taught regarding the Hawaiian Kingdom? Who is or what is being done so that even at that level, at this time, we're doing something to make our keikis aware of what happened in the past, what we're doing now, and what could possibly happen in the future. That's my question. My other question is, okay, so we're fighting for sovereignty, and we don't want to commit war crimes. In the meantime, the people of Puna are like, okay, shops are closing, businesses are losing money. At the same time that we do what we're supposed to be rightfully and rightfully doing, what is Pono, fighting for what is right and taking back what is ours. I consider myself Hawaiian, by the way, even if I'm not Kanaka Maoli. What can we do to help the people of Puna? In Pahoa, there's a shop that just closed, I think, the other day because there's not enough business. The economy there in Lower Puna, even maybe in Upper Puna, is dying. I hope we can do something in the same way that, it's not a one-track approach, I believe. While we're doing this thing, we can also do this thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. Okay, your first question on education. What is being taught in schools today? My niece, she brought home some homework while we were having dinner, and it's funny, how many of you know Tiffany Edwards Hunt? That's her teacher. And I was looking at her homework, and it was talking about the history of Hawaii, and it said in 1959 the United States annexed Hawaii, and Hawaii became a state of the United States. That's what we're teaching our kids right now. That's just my personal experience with my niece. But yes, it comes down to education. The second question is, yes, how they were proposing to initially spend the funds that they were getting from the state and the federal government, because it didn't seem like they were going directly to Puna. A lot of the monies were going to, they wanted to do the Banyan Drive redevelopment agency, but luckily there was $2 million in there for parking in Pahoa, and that's something that I've been advocating with, and I actually negotiated with Parks and Recreation months and months ago for them to allow the people to use the parking lot at the park to be able to go to use the businesses in Pahoa, because parking is one of the main problems. I also advocated for Pahoa to get sidewalks. And what I was saying with the recovery monies was that instead of those monies going to the Banyan Drive Redevelopment Agency, those should be going to start implementing the Puna Community Development Plan, to start supporting the town centers in each subdivision, so that each subdivision can have their own economic activity, and people won't have to keep driving to Hilo for everything. And that's within the Puna Community Development Plan that came straight from the community. And so anyway, so I met with the planning director and research and development, and now I'm working with them for a kind of a concerted, united voice, because the state legislator is treating Hawaii like a redheaded stepchild, basically. Hawaii got $100 million over their flooding. They're making us beg for $12 million. And 700 homes were lost in the lava flow. So that gives you some perspective. All right, no more questions. Oh, okay, I do have to use the bathroom. Okay.
There were 4 police writing tickets down at the corner. Hawaiian license plate HAW04.
Thank you, Brent, for announcing that. I'm sorry.
Today?
I'm really disappointed to hear that. Just so you guys didn't hear that the police were writing tickets for people coming to attend a public town hall to hear their representatives speak for license plates in the Hawaiian Kingdom.
Take your name.
Go ahead, Gene.
Aloha, everyone. I'm Gene Tamashiro. I am a sovereign Hawaiian national, and we're so grateful that people with experience and background and knowledge about how to remedy what we are facing on an international level in the world of commerce or corporate law, and also, fortunately for us, in the world of Keakua's natural law justice that has been codified into our Hawaiian Kingdom Declaration of Rights 1839. So you already hold the key to your remedy because you have unalienable rights that Keakua has bestowed upon you. And so what are rights? Rights are actually any activity that you choose to do and it does not cause harm to other sentient beings. Yeah, follow your bliss and do no harm. Now there's layers of international law and corporate law, and we have to make a very clear distinction. What law are we talking about when we're engaging anybody? Are we talking about corporate law, Roman, civil, corporate, maritime law? Or are we talking about Keakua's law, the law that basically says you can follow your bliss but do no harm? The law of lawful adjudication that requires that we examine what is the truth, was any harm done, and what is the status of agreements. You already hold your key, okay? So I think it's important, along with what Dr. Sai is saying that we need to address on the international level, that because you have an unalienable right to be lawful in your country right now, to organize yourself and assert yourself in correspondence with good people working on the international level. So for anybody that has a Hawaiian Kingdom plate and that you got a ticket, there are those of us, including myself, and the judges know, we will stand up for you because you're lawful in your own country. We have to do presentments before you go. Who in here got a ticket that has Hawaiian Kingdom plates? Because that's what I heard, something happened. Okay, well, if you know who they are, or if you turn out to be one of them, we can deal with that, okay?